to avoid those.
Hi, Eric. I have a question myself. I noticed in the pictures that you showed in your presentation, I guess it's two-part. One, are most of these homes or buildings that you've designed and built, are they mainly on the West Coast? I'm assuming they might be. And have you done any designs that are more on the East Coast? Because the landscape here is so different. For instance, if you were to build more in a city, like have you done things that are actually built in the city? And if so, what they are and what they look like, and like how they really keep in mind the environment around them? Thank you.
Oh yeah, I grew up in Philadelphia and then lived in New York, and I've done projects all over the country. And the projects that you saw, I only showed a few, but they were all kind of in the western half of the country, everywhere from New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Washington. But you don't want to design the same thing for anywhere in the country. No matter where you are, you want to think about what's appropriate for the climate. So if you're designing in Florida, the building would look much different than it would if you were designing it to be in New York, and it should. And those things should start to inform your design. They should start to inspire you to design it better. So you need to look at the weather and the rain and the sun and the wind and use those things to factor into your design.
Thank you. And Westbound Charter, if you have any questions specifically maybe that Eric could help you with in terms of your current design, or if you have any other general comments or questions for him. Thank you.
Go.
Okay. Hello, I'm Ryan, and I have a question about sustainable design for communities, like correcting them. How
Westmount, your audio skipped out again. If you could repeat the question or try to reconnect with the audio, thank you.
Can you hear me now? Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, I'm Ryan, and I had a question about sustainable community design. How do you take a community which is very car dependent, like suburbs, and compact it? Is it possible to compact a community? Thank you.
Yeah, it's very possible to compact a community. The trouble is that everybody's afraid of what that's going to look like, so they probably wouldn't approve it. But if you look at the suburbs, you have a house, and then you have a lawn that nobody uses because they're all in the backyard, and then you have a sidewalk, and then you've got cars. And what you can do is you can, stop parking cars on one side of the street and make them park on the other, and then between the road and the front yard, we can plant gardens, and you could grow your own food if you wanted to. Between the houses, you could put in little stores or businesses or something. But what you really need to do is you need to stop this idea that it's all house and there's nothing but house here, and you need to start mixing in different uses like stores and retail and other things. And then that's how you kind of reclaim the suburbs and compact it, as you say. The trouble is I don't think anybody's going to agree to that, but it's a cool idea, and if you were to design it well enough, it should work.
Thank you, Westmount, for the question. South Plantation, do you have a comment or question, or maybe something specific about the project you're working on currently? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cortland. Earlier you were talking about panels like in between plywood or something like that, just to use instead of concrete here in Florida. I wanted to know if that would actually be like a resource that like we could get easily in Florida, or would that be very expensive to buy, or would that actually be a possible switch from concrete? Thank you.
Oh yeah, you can get it. You can get them in Florida. In fact, they were kind of designed with Florida in mind, because Florida is very unique with its with its hurricanes. We have to design buildings much differently in Florida, and the codes are much different in Florida than they are anywhere else really in the country. Those panels are called SIPs, structural insulated panels, and there's dozens of companies that make them, and you can find them. And I've already seen these SIP buildings in Florida. So it might be something you'd want to research and check out. And what's cool about the SIPs is that they can be used for the wall, the roof, and the floor all at once. So you're using the same material and you're not creating as much waste. And they come 4 feet wide, so you'd want to make the building some module of 4 feet. And then you want all the windows to fit into that 4 feet, so you wouldn't need to cut it as much. And by doing all that, you could save a lot of money at the same time.
Thank you. I have a question too, and it might be obvious for some folks, but this is again a new program for me, and the first time I'm participating. But I wonder, when you build a house and you design it, the basic, I guess, structure is like plumbing, for instance, or irrigation around it, especially if you're in a suburb city and you have to take in mind various networks of underground plumbing or things like that that obviously affect what goes in and up into a specific structure. Does that sometimes affect your design, or do you design new things to kind of adapt to current things that are around? I mean, I'm just thinking about, you said in your own house you have certain, your soapy water flush your toilet instead of the clean water, but I'm also just thinking in terms of what's underground and the networks of an entire city and how maybe that plays in, or if it does have a role in your designs. Thank you.
Yeah, well, very often nearly every building has to tie into something, whether it's tying into the existing plumbing or the existing sewer or the connecting to the existing electrical line. Buildings have to tie into this grid of everything else. What we can do is we can be smarter about what we're pulling off of the grid. In front of everybody's house along the street is a main trunk of a sewer line, a freshwater line, and a power line. And all of your houses are all drawing off of that and dumping things back into it. Once it gets to the house, though, that's when we can control how it's used. So we don't have to use as much water. And the way we do that is we can put in a low-flow shower head, or we can not wash our clothes as often, or we can use toilets that don't flush 5 gallons for every flush, but they only flush 1 gallon for every flush. So at the end point, inside the house, we can have much greater control over how we use these resources. But the resources are already there. That's why in a place like a city like New York, it's much more sustainable, because you have so many more people using the same resources, as opposed to the suburbs where you're distributing all that stuff around, and it's creating much more waste.
Thank you. Westbound Charter, do you have any questions to continue the dialogue with Eric? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark LeClaire. Just a quick question. So for our project in Ecuador, our locally available building materials consist of wood, cinder blocks, and concrete. Would you say that local materials are a better alternative than new, more ecologically sustainable materials sourced from another place other than in Ecuador? So we'd have to bring them down with us. Thank you.
I think the local materials would be a better choice, because the local materials also, if you think about it, have a lot of benefits to them. One, they don't require as much energy to get them to the property, because they're already there. Two, they're supporting the local economy. The local Ecuadorians are making that stuff, so it's helping, create jobs and keep them in jobs. But also, they're materials that are appropriate to the place. I wouldn't just look at standard materials like concrete blocks and things. I'd look to see what the oldest buildings in Ecuador are built out of. That's usually a sure indication of the appropriate way to build. So if you look at like their old traditional buildings, what were they made out of? And that'll inform what's appropriate for the weather and for the climate and for the landscape. So some research into what they used to build is probably a good thing. It's only been in the last 50 years that everybody started building the same way all over the planet. And we've forgotten how to build something that is appropriate to a place.
Thank you, Eric. I thought maybe a good tip for the students, you have one presentation here, but instead of showing it, I wonder if you could verbally share some basic resources of where students could maybe find tips of how to help them